and thank you all for enlightening us about infrastructure. And I mean, speaking to myself, I'm slowly but surely getting like super intrigued about infrastructure. And I was really interested. To me, it was very interesting to sort of hear the broad scope, like going from relationality and dependency to quality and measurement and standards and sort of getting actionable data to again back to the more sort of hidden aspects of infrastructure. Thank you all for your presentations. Lisa, my colleague, who's also the person to talk about the digital project too, has a microphone. And I'm wondering who has a question. Do you have any questions to each other
I
to
can ask
start?
a question.
And then there is a second question. Go ahead, James.
Yeah.
Then Tom.
So actually, on the water side of things,
Mm.
could you talk a little bit about the practices of this co-creation or collaboration that you're anticipating? I mean, how do you engage the municipality, the public, the political bodies in terms of that co-creation of change that you were alluding to at the end?
Yeah, so we have like a huge project sponsored by EU, where we, for instance, had it was Röda Oasen. It was even in the TV show Husdrömmar, where they we together with them help them reuse the rainwater to flush all the toilets. And this it's a collective living, so I think it's like 40 people living all together. So and in order to get this moving, so this is like pushing the limits for the regulations, for instance. So actually, we're cleaning the raining water in their basements to be drinking quality in order for them to be allowed to flush their toilets. That's how the regulation is working right now. And it's also this with how you take care of the water, because it's, you know, it's both the city, ours, Via Syd, as well as the estate owners issue. So that's there is a lot of co-creation that needs to, and we have to press the rules and try to do it. So we're very proud of that. And we try to see how can we now grow that and increase that to make more things happen. But it's been a few years journey just to do that. But it's working perfectly, and they're very happy. I was there just the other month, and they're very proud. We are. So.
Very cool.
So yeah.
Please say your name and what you do when you're not here.
My name is Tana, and I'm a student. I was really curious how you each have this like different area of expertise and knowledge that you bring, and how, I mean, it kind of just also happened a little bit, like, but how you envision like collaboration between yourselves. Maybe this is a big question, like, and maybe I put you on the spot, but like you're focusing on AI, you're an academic that's interested also in this relationality. You're working very specifically with like the infrastructure in the ground. How do you see like collaboration across the sectors that you work in as possible or interesting, or does it happen?
Well, I think that we are trying, at least from Via Syd's point of view. We've made a new organization, and we have the department that where I belong to now. We are about 20 people that are opening up a lot more for cooperation with our owners, as well as research and development. And that's also why I have time to even be here. Before I wouldn't. So we actually set aside some time for us to go out and look for cooperation, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we think about research and how research is done these days, it is in collaboration with different kinds of stakeholders. We do not sit in our own in the office thinking big thoughts and doing great literature or research. We are doing that together with people who knows things practically. We have, my colleagues at the university have a big project on water right now, financed by the European Union. When we are working on transportation, I do that with the public transport authorities, planners in the cities, and stakeholder groups, interest groups. So we do that kind of collaborations all the time, and it's a requirement from those who are funding our research. So we do a lot of collaboration. I would say that's the normal way of doing research these days.
Yeah, and our entire model is collaboration. We are not we don't come from a background and expertise in sustainability or the built environment or any of these spaces that we work on, where we are technology, AI, business process, design experts. What we noticed was just a complete gap in these other organizations that hold the responsibility for sustainable change. And so we need to get in there and work largely through design-driven methodologies, which is collaborative in nature. We prefer open knowledge sharing and workshopping early on, essentially putting all of the assets on the table. Essentially who we work with, they put the assets on the table, and we put our capabilities on the table, and we see what we can do together. There is no prescriptive solution out there for the challenges that we are addressing. So you have to be very good at a co-collaboration, co-creation model, and use a wide variety of skill sets, from fundamental research to business practices to new technologies emerging. So being open fundamentally, that's really the key.
One aspect, though, is that it's not simple, because we have very different cultures and we have different time horizons when we do research, or if we're working practically about solving a transport issue, for instance. So it's you have to understand that it's also a very it takes time and requires a lot of trust and building trust to do good research in collaboration.
I think that's a really interesting point. I just got back from Canada on the weekend, and I was talking to a small city, around 250,000 people outside of Toronto, the people who run facility management there, and they're working on 20-year horizons. They have a lot of buildings to create, and they're transforming their landscape. They've run out of space, and they need to start building up and down for population. But at the same time, they need to also work today. And so there is an urgent demand both for the longitudinal, longer horizon research that will influence direction, but they need a practical application today because time just keeps moving. So these have to be done in tandem.
And don't forget to say your name and what you do when you're not here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael. I work as a project manager. A very practical question for the VA Syd part. The price of water, if it's really low, what's the main hindrance for just increasing it like a bit? If it's 3.7 euro per liter, why not like 5 euro? Still very cheap, but still potentially quite a lot more.
And we are actually, and the politicians have said yes. So we are, but that's still not enough money. That for what's needed.
So the answer is it's a political question, and I mean because it could
Yeah.
also just as well be like 10 euro. It could be a penny.
Yeah, it could be a penny.
And what's the reason for not doing that?
Well, politically, or as I interpret it, I don't know, is any politician, maybe Linda, you should help me here so I don't say something wrong, but I think there's been a longing that water should be really accessible and cheap for a long time. So yeah, so we are behind. I mean, we are behind. We haven't taken our system, and we've been expanding. And luckily, like I said, they thought that we were going to use 500 liters, so that was oversized. Luckily, the drinking water system, but the sewage is not. So, yeah. And we're dancing, and we need to expand. And unlike other infrastructure, like you get thinner and thinner cables for Wi-Fi stuff and whatever that's called now, fibers. We need bigger and bigger pipes, because it is really raining a lot more, and it ends up where it ends up, and we can't control it. Yeah. So money is needed.
Yeah, because
I think the state needs to come in. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think we are there and will be there very soon. And I think but that's my personal opinion. I'm not speaking VSE now, because that's where we are. I think. Sorry.
Did you want to ask something more, or no? You can also have a debate afterwards if you wish.
And I think another aspect here is that we want to cultivate in the farmland, and so we also want to become Dacer. We don't want to spread the urban planning, and that's also so not just more rain. So that complexity. Yeah.
Do you have one more final question before more coffee and maybe some leftover buns? Yes. And I know that it's easy to forget to say your name, but that's a nice custom, so please do that.
Okay, hello, my name is Max, and I work as an entrepreneur here in Malmö. I'm interested in kind of like the collaboration between AI and like research and like knowledge from the industry. So how well do you see like an enablement in AI in generating potential futures with taking in knowledge from all the sensors, all the data you've gathered, and then with inputs from research and from like the industry? Is there like how do you see the collaboration between human knowledge, human needs, and generating potential futures that like I think generative AI is quite good at in like hallucinating? Do you see that there's like it can generate different futures and help in city planning, in mitigating risks, and in just learning from the past, adapting it to the future, but still having human ingenuity choose the path that we want to create?
So from my perspective, it's dependent on, we talked about it already, the time horizons we're talking about. On a shorter time horizon, running simulations is fantastic in terms of looking at the capabilities of generative capabilities within a small context. So I mean, running simulations for the entire country of Sweden and all of the complexities there is a non-feasible thing in the current state of AI, and it might just be a pipe dream that you could accurately run that without, as you're saying, the hallucinations or just thinking you have enough data to run that. But to run a simulation of a building, an organization, those are feasible today, and there's a category of technologies called digital twins that are important to look at, that essentially make the digital, literally digital twins of the data in different layers in infrastructure, and whether that's human capital, resources, business processes, sustainability data, what have you, and that allows you to run simulations and scenarios through them. But this is looking at, what if we replace the ventilation system with a different type of HVAC support, and it's very good, and you can look at cost modeling and sustainability and so on within that scope. I think what you're talking about in terms of creating those futures, unknown yet as to how far you can push it, and I wouldn't rely on that. I think you have to rely on research, more traditional or emerging styles of research, perhaps in tandem with some granular AI modeling. I don't know, maybe you can speak to that and if there's any influence within the academic fields at this point.
Well, yes, of course, AI is used in research and in urban studies and planning. Of course it is. But it's also, when we talk about research, what kind of research are we talking about? Because we have different, we come from different disciplines. We have the technical and the scientific research fields, which ask questions in one specific way. And we have the social and humanities, who are asking questions from a different perspectives. So it's also about how we take these new technologies and implement them in a social context, and what that means when we implement them to different groups in society, and who benefits from them and who don't. So there's all these layers of different perspectives when we're talking about combining research and technology. What kind of research do we talk about, and what kind of technology are we addressing? So you would have different answers depending on who is standing here, I would say, about how easy or how feasible it is to do these combinations.
Or are you on to AI sort of creating and visualizing the future to be?
I mean, as you said, like it's really good with like taking in complexity, and yeah, I agree. Like it's depending on the question you ask to whom, you get different answers, and it might be interesting for like shorter futures to take in multiple points of views and then kind of finding a the most or like the best feasible path. It could simulate different kinds of futures.
Yeah, I think you have to look at it as puzzle pieces. So I would never today over trying to bake the boil the ocean with single prompts and so on. But if you take discrete practices of traffic flow modeling and things like that, and then you build your puzzle up, and you can do that. But it's a lot of there's no silver bullet here yet. But those are giant questions you're asking. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty still an amazing set of technologies that are emerging and practices that I think are going to be developed on the fly for the next 10 years from an emergent practice perspective.
Could I ask a question? Because I've been thinking, well, not deep on generative AI, and we have some introductions to what it is, of course, but when we're thinking about these bright futures, these total disruptive ideas, how it will become. But from what I understand, generative IT is based on what we already know. So how can we create those disruptive, prosperous futures?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, but I think it's very similar to the research that might be done. Insights and action are still dependent on humans in the loop. AI can present perspectives. You can ask it for lenses on the existing data, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend using the open models to just going into ChatGPT and saying that's the end all and be all. There's whole practices of knowledge-based mapping and feeding the data that is important and contextual that you want to have in there. It's a very good sparring partner and feedback loop. But today, you're absolutely correct. It is based on the existing knowledge bases and bindings that you create to that knowledge base. And I see it much more of outside of the task domain that I was talking about, which it's very good at executing tasks in terms of creating insights, which is not necessarily we're not looking at the sort of the foresight element, but personally speaking, I wouldn't overly rely on that without a human in the loop, certainly driving that today. Now, that's not to say, I mean, the rumors are that AGI is coming, or is maybe already here and somewhere living at Microsoft, and then it's, all bets are off. Who knows at that point? But we're trying to work within the here and now and what you can do. So I think we're all important in our futures still.
James, Stina, Pia, thank you so much for coming this morning and for sharing your knowledge and insights. so much.